290. We ticked the odometer to the 90s.
10 away from number 300.
Yeah, we're just that much closer. With me is the ever omnipotent, capable, competent, knowledgeable guru of all things meta.
I'll just keep going. You're doing great.
All those words you sent me, I've been rehearsing them. Mr. Dean Schmidt with Basecamp Meta Search Marketing. Mr. Dean, thank you. Good morning.
Great to be here.
It's kind of funny because we've been sharing a little space on Clubhouse as well, and it's different, the tone of dialogues. I mean, it's here we do kind of the same thing, but it is not as, I would say, interactive audience wise, even though we get people that do chime in and comment in the chat room and so forth. That's kind of a more traditional webinar-ish thing, I guess. Little Brady Bunch talking heads and stuff. Anyway, what do you?
A little bit. In fairness, one of the advantages of an audio only format like Clubhouse is that it's kind of like a podcast, right? I can take it with me in my car. I can take it with me to the gym. I can multitask while I'm doing it. So in fairness, a lot of those people who aren't talking or speaking up, they could be in the bathroom for all we know. You know what I mean?
Wait. I didn't have a camera on or anything, no?
Yeah, well, not since that one time, but yeah, we'll let that
I didn't mean to flush when I was talking. It's just bad coincidence. Actually, it's funny you mentioned that because Melissa Kavanaugh from Field Travel, who jumped in on our dialogue yesterday, obviously was trying to stay away because I invited her as a speaker earlier and she declined it. Like, okay, she just wants to be in the audience today. But then she felt compelled to join. I can see why she did, because she's in the middle of traffic, literally, kind of thing. And people are a little less tolerant about the background noise thing. I didn't even have to say a word. As soon as the noise came up, somebody chimed in, "Hey, mute your microphone," or whatever it was. So it's like, there seems to be a bit of an etiquette of audio on Clubhouse to that. And I don't want to just necessarily dwell on it, but since it's you and I chatting at this particular moment, what's your thoughts on Clubhouse?
It's interesting. My first piece of curiosity is how they're going to monetize it, because eventually that's going to become the question, right? And my thought is that they're actually developing it and hoping to sell it to somebody. And that's where it gets a little bit more interesting, because as I joined Clubhouse, I first had to ask myself, am I joining this as a personal social network, or am I joining this as a professional business network? And I opted for the professional business approach. So far, and granted, this tends to be the audience I'm gravitating towards, so that has something to do with it. But so far, I haven't seen any of that. Yeah, the peer-to-peer social type of content on there. It has been more professional, which leads me to believe this could be an interesting marriage with something like LinkedIn somewhere down the road.
I don't disagree with you at all. And Richard, I don't know. I'd just love to ask you, Marcy and Scott, anybody else that's popped into our chat room so far. Are you guys with iPhones? Are you on that chat Clubhouse platform app? That's kind of the new social thing. And we've already had these discussions now for a little over a week as to, is it another Google Wave? Like, yay, no, or is it more like a TikTok? Like, what? Huh? Because it has kind of grown up. To that, Dean, I say that it depends on what time of day you look at it, because obviously time zones shift as we go through. And we know that from the chats that we do on there, the rooms that we do on there, we get quite an international crowd. I mean, they're all over the place. Belize, Portugal, Spain, just they're pretty much everywhere. Scott, totally addicted. Yeah, it can be addicting because it's kind of like it kind of feeds your voyeurism. Like, okay, what are they saying? And you don't have to, ta-da, here I am. You can just kind of roll into the room and listen to what's being done and quietly leave. It literally button says quietly leave.
Quietly, yeah.
So it does have that flair to it. But to your point about professionalism versus personalism, I'm beginning to notice, because I'm getting the notifications all the time, I go pop in, and there's a lot of different rooms and different nights. How can you find love on CH, which obviously Clubhouse, meeting singles? I've just like popped up because, I tried to hit as many interest categories as possible, stuff to see what flows through this whole process. And there's a lot of stuff out there where I've actually had to go back in and go, yeah, let's not follow that content there. But I do like the business aspect of it.
Yeah.
And I got to say, and I'm not trying to be, for us, but some of the content that's being pushed out as hospitality is a bunch of junk. I mean, there was one about the Caribbean marketing, and all the girl wanted to talk about is like, I'm traveling to Caribbean. I love rum. Where can I go? And I'm like, oh my God, that's not.
There's no qualification to it. There's no filter to it. There's no nothing, right? It is raw, uncensored content. Yeah, and I get the alert. That's one thing I've been debating too. So I get the notifications on my phone. I allowed it to do that. You don't have to, obviously,
Right.
but I get a lot of them. Right. So during the course of this show, I'll probably have at least 20 of them come up, and half of them half of them I can't read. They're in a different language, and just a lot of them come up, and you question whether or not it's worth it or not. So I don't know. It's interesting. Again, it gives you that ability to multitask a little bit. I can do that and do other stuff at the same time.
I think it's going to be an interesting fit forward. And I say this not in detriment to our current show or what we do with the show. The show will continue on. We've been doing it for years through a variety of economic cycles. So it's not as if we're necessarily hinged to the fact that everybody wants to be glued to a screen at this point. But as we begin to emerge, for lack of a better word, I think it's probably close to being accurate, into our travel habits again, we'll carry forward some of this dialogue stuff, this connected stuff. I think Facebook, even Twitter to a certain degree, has really tainted people's this opinion of them. They've come to be very much citadels on a hill. You can't reach them when there's a problem. You can't solve when if something comes up. It's your life is massively disrupted when you get hacked. If you get hacked, it's almost impossible to dialogue with the platform to regain identity or whatever have you. Their processes are too automated to be so far removed from human interaction. You don't, and I understand logistics and so forth and so on, but the reality of it is that you get tethered to their platform. So even though this platform, as you mentioned, might be adopted by somebody, acquired by somebody, or what have you, and even though Facebook and Twitter are creating their own versions of this type of stuff, I think by the very nature that it's not Facebook and Twitter, it's going to add the value of I'd much rather go to this platform, as quirky as it is, or as, gee, I wish it would do this instead of this thing, or I wouldn't have to be inconvenienced by filling in these forms, than to go back to Facebook and Twitter and be faced with the fact you're throwing another thing in the pile that they can take away from you.
But it all comes back again to the question of how are they going to monetize it?
I'm sure, yeah. I mean, I've already had thoughts about the fact that they're going to start where organic rooms are one thing, paid rooms are another, advertising within the room while you're there based on content. Like, hey, I'm talking about hospitality. If I'm talking about travel and destination location information, and you can filter that out, all of a sudden I'm throwing a little, lower bar banner on the thing going, hey, you think about going to the Caribbean? We got rum, whatever.
Right.
Anywho, with it. So, we've had, I know Robert was great about finding his, I told him, I said, man, I'm not trying to guilt you or anything. I just need to know, should we be getting your list, dude? We're wondering whether, did you win the lotto and you just don't want to send us stuff anymore? Or, but he's been doing some serious business, but he got back at it again. He gave us a pretty cool list and a very long discussion on some stuff. I don't know if we can get to that per se, but since it is just you and I defer to you as to what you would think you would like to speak about.
Well, actually, I do want to talk about the TripAdvisor Plus article that he posted in there.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to
throw that link up. Hold on. Throw the link up if you got it. If not,
so
I'll find it.
this famous I want to make about that going into, so it's kind of a full transparency. TripAdvisor actually reached out to me and has scheduled time with me. It's on my calendar next week that they want to talk to me about their TripAdvisor Plus.
Yep,
so
I'm there too.
I was impressed with the fact that they did that. So that tells me that they're reaching out to digital agencies and people who are involved in this in the industry and having those conversations with them. So kudos to them for that part of it. But the other thing being, I feel like we've completely missed what the more interesting part of TripAdvisor was, and that is the partnership that they're doing now with their semantic data for destinations. Have you seen that?
No, I haven't. I was looking for the article on the other, the one that you were talking about. But go ahead, please.
Yeah, I'll give you a quick synopsis of it. So, in light of everybody's coming out of the pandemic, right? And so, what TripAdvisor is doing now is they're taking social commentary, social content by destination, and so they're breaking down, say, for New York City, right? In the reviews, what are people saying? In other public forums, what are people saying? But generally, just what are people saying about New York City as a destination? And then how does that compare with Miami as a destination and different stuff like that? And they're putting all this content together. Bear with me for a moment. I think I've got that link.
I got it.
You got it? Okay. I thought that was the real interesting piece that came out from TripAdvisor. Yeah, you got it in there. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
And there's, especially in post-COVID here now, I think there's a lot that can be done with that. And if I'm a destination marketing organization, a DMO, I ought to be subscribing to that. Incidentally, I might have a little bit of a bias on this because many years ago, I worked with a reputation management program, and I was actually trying to push something exactly like this. So my claim to fame, I'm going to say that I thought of this 5 years ago, but kudos to TripAdvisor. Actually, it's more like 10 years ago, but kudos to TripAdvisor for doing something with it and putting this together. I think it's brilliant on their part.
I do agree. I don't know if I was looking again because I looked at it the first time and then back again to it. It's just one. I do agree with you. First of all, I think it would have been better done by you than them, but that's just me. But I don't know if they're the ones that can bring it to market. I know they have the scale to bring it to market.
Well, they're teaming with somebody else. There's an outside company that they're partnering with to do that.
Yeah. But my concern is not the fact that the logistics are there or anything. It's the sentiment against TripAdvisor, I guess. The sentiment of the sentiment. The fact that, is it too little too late? Is it too little in the right direction from how wrong they've been so long? I wish Adele was probably on the show today. She's probably a little bit more in tune with some of because she's very intimate with the whole TripAdvisor ecosystem than either of us are in that sense. And we'll definitely reach out to her and see maybe we can add that to our dialogue a little bit earlier on. But the idea that TripAdvisor is creating the sentiment program, is it a little too late, or is it really rewriting the ship? Are they beginning to listen to the dissent about what they are more than they used to just defy everybody and say, we don't care, we're going to do what we feel we can monetize? Because there was a fork in the road for TripAdvisor. We've talked about on the show before. There was a fork in the road before for TripAdvisor. Do we go the high ground of working with the purpose of our platform, which is consumer sentiment, consumer feedback, honesty, truth, transparency, or do we go for the cash? And they took a right. And they went for it. Yeah, sure, we'll go over and let you pay for the number one spot in the platform right in front of everybody else. But
in fairness, now you see just about every other channel out there doing the same thing. You've got TripAdvisor sponsored placements. You got Google promoted hotels. You've got Kayak is splattered with inline ads and everything. They've been doing that actually really longer than anybody else.
Yeah,
and the list goes on. So I can't.
I used to be a fanboy of Kayak when it first came out. I used to use it incessantly. I love when they expanded into rental cars. I love when they expanded into other. And now I don't even use it. I mean, the only time Kayak comes up for me is dialogue about whether we need to place clients on there because it suits their particular regionality or market that Kayak is a influencer on the decision process, purchasing process.
By the way, I would tell you, if anybody listening, if you're in Las Vegas, you ought to be on Kayak. For whatever reason, I've never understood exactly why, Kayak kills it in Las Vegas.
With that in mind, there's only two of us on this. We got plenty of seating space. If anybody's, Richard, you want to pop on? Scott, I know. Hey, Melissa, Marcia. I mean, honestly, we don't want you to just get bored listening us back and forth go. We're expecting that probably other people pop in or not, but if not, too bad. Just go on in, and even if they do, so what? We got plenty of room. We do have the rubbers list. We can go through a little bit of it, obviously, but we just finished talking about a little bit about Clubhouse, which of course is the new fatty thing that I got to think that they got to get into Android real soon, or they're going to really miss that boat. Because if Twitter or Facebook comes out, regardless of my feeling that people are like this because it's not them, it's just a matter of adoption. If I'm an Android user and I hear all about Clubhouse and I don't have an Apple product to put it on, I don't care who gives me the platform type. As soon as I get it, I'll be like, well, fine. I'll just go to Twitter's or I'll just go to Facebook's or Instagram's, whatever it is.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, sorry, I interrupted you when you were talking about this whole.
Oh, no, all right. Let's circle back to TripAdvisor Plus, though. We started that conversation and we rabbit holed down about 3 other directions.
Typical, right?
So, but as you mentioned, TripAdvisor had the right or left that they could take many years ago, right? And if anybody's read Robert's article and some of his opinions about it, he points out a fact that for TripAdvisor Plus, by the way, if you don't know what it is, as a consumer, I can pay an annual fee, $99, and for that, I get exclusive deals on TripAdvisor. That's the short of it, right? And so Robert pointed out, okay, so for the average consumer to recoup that and get the benefit from that, you'd have to spend anywhere from $600 to $1,000, on travel. Okay, so that's very doable, really. You think about it, one trip and you're
Break
probably
even.
there. Yeah, exactly. For this breaking even. But the other thing that speaks to is what type of demographic they're looking for, and that's where I think that this is a good move for them. Although I'm going to be critical of them in other areas. TripAdvisor, Google, when we talk about meta search, is the 800-pound gorilla, more than 8,000-pound gorilla. Even as a review site, Google now exceeds TripAdvisor, by the way. If you're curious, though, Booking.com, by the way, exceeds both of them. That's another conversation. But when we talk about a specific niche, a specific category of traveler, and that being more of the high-end traveler, I'm going to the luxury hotels. I'm going to the hotel in the Caribbean. I'm going to the Four Seasons Maldives and those types of properties. The things where I want the consumer to come and look at my pretty pictures. And there's a longer sales cycle and there's a bigger process that goes with it. TripAdvisor has really still had a good foothold in that market. And that's where I think this TripAdvisor Plus actually pairs up with that very nicely, in that those are the people who are going to say, yeah, I'll pay $99. And while the discounts maybe are secondary because you're an affluent traveler, it's still a nice perk to be able to have. And so I think if they center that and focus that on the right type of traveler and the right type of properties, that it can be a win for them. Now, if they're trying to do that for the limited service hotel at the airport, it's going to fail.
Mm-hmm. To this end, I mean, we've had this discussion before on the live show before. Membership and the value of membership and relationships. One of the things that most independent hotels are faced with, should they see the value proposition of this, and I'll bring this to a first case example in just a second. One of the value assets of brands is this ability to say, by joining or being a member of whatever affiliation we create, you get a value proposition in its relationship. Now, for the brands, that's carrot and stick mentality. It's a frequency program, not a loyalty program. We've had dialogue a lot about that it's a matter of, here's the carrot on the stick. You stay with us long enough, we start giving you little things like bottled water and preferred rooms and whatever, however, trinkets and bubbles we want to give you. Independent hotels are faced with the choice of, wow, do I join these network ones that I am now an inventory component to that? Okay, like, hey, look, I join a large organization that they can go to a restaurant, they come to me, they can redeem points either way, and then we have this infrastructure as to how that gets compensated for.
Right.
Do I start my own? Well, if I start my own, nobody won. First off, then goes the whole, I don't need an app. Although if Stuart was here, he would argue to contest that. And Melissa's here, so she can come up and beat us over the head with it if she wants. But the other is that with the membership, it's a very temporal thing. I need it when I need it, and I don't when I don't. I don't come to you enough, or need to come to you enough, that has a value proposition. That frequency program just does not exist. And if you're paying me to get a benefit that, like you just said with TripAdvisor, when's my payback? And then when do I get benefit from it? It's one thing just to wash even. Why, that's an exercise. What you just said about TripAdvisor is, you know what? I'm going to join because I'm making a big old Mongo Jungle trip to Europe coming up. And I'm going to be dropping forward to $6,000. So this is my lifetime bucket list, check the box event. I'm going to join that, hoping that I can double down my money value, save twice as much of what I had to spend to do it, which makes it worthwhile for me. And if you can then, which they don't, offer exclusive other things that is not offered to the other people. And that's my point of all this.
I would
it's
agree
the
with
drop
that.
down of not just the, what do I get for it, but how does it help me? Which lends itself to our current marketing conversations. We don't broadcast anymore. That's old news. We help, guide, and answer now. So the first thing we need to do is answer to people what they want. How can I benefit you by dialoguing with me? That's where the membership value proposition comes in. I would almost say that individual hotels could offer a relationship thing that isn't about, and this is the value reversed, it isn't about what you have to pay me to join in. It's what can I offer you to want to join to talk to me? Because your data is way more valuable than just your dollars spent with me.
Mm-hmm.
That's the part that gets that falls down with marketing, I think, a lot. Just because you know about me traveling with you isn't to resell just me coming back in all the flavors that I travel, whether it's business, family, whatever it is. That's a lifetime value guest proposition. We've done that number dynamically for decades. now in our new technology world, it's what is the information about me worth generically? Age, gender, income, location, interest, that information added to other me's, that are many me's, um, is a value proposition of insight to the hotel that goes far beyond just the indirect revenue that I produce. That's what's getting missed in the dialogue of membership value. Is if you can get me to connect with you in a more expanded way, and you reward me for doing that, not that I have to necessarily pay. This isn't just the money I make, the money you make from me isn't about what I gave you to do this. The money you make from me is the information that I am providing you to better understand what you can offer people like me for travel choices.
Mhm.
Melissa, I would just love for you to chop on this because I know you just be jumping all over this data stuff.
Well, so
Anyway,
now let me throw out the critical analysis of what TripAdvisor is doing, right? And so they're putting in these closed user group rates. You have to subscribe to it, become a member to it, and you get this special rate and so forth. Been there, done that. There's 100 of them out there. Excuse me. There's no shortage of closed user. Hell, I can do that with Google. I can do that with Kayak. I can do that on my loan loyalty program. It's a repeated theme that we've seen over and over again. Only now TripAdvisor wants you to pay for it. Heck, I can go to Priceline and still get. Actually, they've revamped their what used to be opaque model to where now it's a slightly different model that you get 3 different hotels that it could possibly be. They call it price breakers. All this stuff is out there already. I don't know that this is necessarily new.
I am mentoring Joshua real quick. You put the comparison to Robinhood, and it is true that I didn't come from that, but when you made that comparison, Joshua, it just resonates. Like, yeah, because you look at. I'm sorry, we're all skeptical of marketing. As soon as we see something come out to market, or it's too good to be true, we're like, yeah, what's their monetization? I mean, seriously, that's the question I ask. What's the monetization? Where are they made? It's all good. Same to a Clubhouse. Honestly, okay, it's all great. Where are they going to start making money? And it is because we do what we do. We know that it's all good until somebody has to pay the bills.
Right.
So how are you going to get to pay the bills? And Robinhood, I had that same conversation. Okay, so you're all doing this non-commission. Where's your money? I said, and Renee, my wife, she's always the one that points. I said, data.
That's not
flat out, it's data. Like I just pointed out with Joshua, it's like, yeah, your buying propensity, your incomes. Thank you, Melissa. First party data, very critical component. Actually, Melissa, thank you, because we just got off of a conversation with Clubhouse 2 days ago, about cookies, third party cookies going away, transitioning, and Melissa was the one that vanguarded the very specific dialogue. It's not cookies, it's third-party cookies. First-party cookies are just fine. When they touch your site, when they deal directly with you, you can track what they're doing in the context of that. But it's the other people using the data as they pass through to you and from you and whatever have you. So yes, first-party data, being able to relate to, and that goes to another level, which I'm going to bring in, channel my inner steward on this one, is using that first-person communication capability to better refine your data. And whether you directly generate revenue from the people you're first person communicating with, it's more important that they influence others to do the same thing that they've already done. You're now working into the psychology of people of like, I don't want to be the putz that bought something that was a lemon. So if I did something good and I show value and the people that I bought it from are giving me more value that I can share with other people, that makes me look great. I'm going to share that. That's viral. Let me tell my friends how cool and smart I am by having done what I did with you, bought your stuff, and how much I can give them, generous me, that I can give you because I did that kind of thing. I'm the hero. Look at me. I'm going to be popular at cocktail parties when we get to have them again.
Coming back to TripAdvisor, that's part of what they tried doing over a year ago already too. They wanted to become a social site, right, where you would have friends on TripAdvisor and they would provide recommendations and you could make decisions based on that. And it never really caught on because, quite frankly, I don't have friends on TripAdvisor. I have friends maybe on LinkedIn and on Facebook, right? Now, here's where we really get interesting because we talked about the lighthouse versus the lantern model, right? And being able to walk somebody through their travel experience. And doing that at scale requires more people to be involved, and including friends, right? We have to have that user-generated content, and we have to have adaptation by the masses. So now imagine, but one of my dream mergers that I don't know that's ever going to happen. By the way, if there's any stock people out there, don't go saying that Dean said this was going to happen. That's not what I mean. But I want just imagine for a moment if Facebook and Twitter, or Facebook and TripAdvisor ever got together. So you had the travel marketplace of TripAdvisor along with the social influences of Facebook, and merge those two together. Now that would be an interesting platform.
You know, Facebook tried, and I really do, and they're not tried and they failed. It never really became what I thought it was going to become. And this happened when I was traveling to, I like Dean's stonks.
Stonks.
What the heck stonks? Gosh, what stonks? Dude, I am not lingo savvy stonks.
Is that what made up words?
I don't know what that is. But when I went to Hawaii a few years ago, it's a play on words, stock references to game. Hey, I didn't know that. It's a play on words, stock references to GameStop fiasco. Wow, I did not know. Stonks. That makes sense. Now that you tell me what it is, it makes perfect sense. Thank you, Joshua. Facebook just rolled out their reviews of things like, hey, you know, Dean went to this restaurant nearby you. You know, Tom went to this bar next to you. And I thought it was a very powerful influencer that it wasn't nameless, faceless. I'm looking up what people I don't know say about it. I know Dean likes, you know, I mean, Dean liked the same kind of chow when we go out conferencing, man. We, you know, if he likes his place, I'm probably gonna like the place because, you know, he's pretty particular about barbecue, you know, and this is a barbecue joint. So if he went there, didn't say you necessarily liked it, just said you went there, you know. Obviously, if you were posting stuff, I would have seen it. But at the time, I wasn't in Hawaii, so I would not have really cared. Like, oh, Dean's having fun, but I wouldn't have really thought, wow, that's a place I'm going to, you know, write that down. I'm going to go there. So it didn't carry through as much as I thought it would by showing me what you reviewed or what you commented or what you said about it. I had no way of finding that post that you may have done or that whatever. But it did influence me on, well, heck, if such and such went there, let me go check it out. And it was the difference between that or another place. So I thought that was going to be a very powerful influencer that I would have a more personalized referral in Facebook. But I never, I mean, anybody else that's listening to us, I mean, did it change? It didn't grow up as big as I thought it was. I thought it was going to be a real challenge to the anonymousness of, anonymous, it's not even a word, the lack of personalization of the TripAdvisor, Expedia generalized reviews, where you don't know who these people are. You can have a sentiment towards them, you know, like, oh, okay, yeah, I'd be pissed if the bathroom was dirty too. But not that if they're going to tell you that the restaurant was not to their standard, what was your standard? That, you know, food hot, cold, service good, bad? I mean, it's very ambiguous compared to actually knowing the person. Anyway, sorry.
Well, you know, Facebook is going back, oh gosh, this must be even 6 years ago, was that close to becoming a meta channel. And the reason I know about this is because I worked with them on their connectivity back in the day. So they were trying to get rates fed into, it was a mobile only experience. It had to be on your mobile phone. It wasn't on your desktop, where if I was on mobile and I was looking at hotels in Las Vegas, for example, it would actually come up with hotels, rates and availability, and a click to book button on there. There's only a single point of sale option. The only difference between that and a meta search channel is there was a single point of sale. But they could have very easily added in an OTA and whatever had it. And even just as a commerce platform, as a point of sale, I was a little surprised that didn't take off more than it did. You know, you don't hear anybody talk about, oh, I need to be on Facebook with my rates and availability like I do on Expedia. No, nobody says that. But and again, that's why I see Facebook and TripAdvisor combination would get that off the ground. But anyway, that's just me.
I'm thinking that when it comes to the future of reviews and so forth, and just, I mean, this is just hypothetical thinking of it, we're dealing with more engagement, live engagement now than we have ever done before. It's a push of what COVID has done for us or to us. That we are doing what we're doing here. And I mean, yes, we've been doing this for going in our 7th year. It's not as if this is a new concept, but the interaction that this has created is very similar to what people, when they had to get pushed onto Zoom or Microsoft Teams or whatever have you. and now Clubhouse pops up, and we know already from the visceralness of Twitter and so forth, we're already accustomed to the text engagement when we want to look and share or what have you. The problem is that there's not been really quality, accurate figures of stuff. When remember when beacons were out, when we started getting all jazzed about beacons and like, wow, people are going to know when I walk by their store or walk in their store or where I am in their store. And there's a lot of that location-based marketing, proximity marketing stuff that's still lingering, and it has improved and it is always there. But it really didn't grow into what I thought was going to be a serious aspect of marketing strategy. It's there and it is talented, and I do use it.
I saw a really good example of that back in the day, actually. Foursquare. Everybody remember Foursquare?
Up Foursquare until they split it up and did Swarm and everything else.
Well, yeah, but I remember very distinctly. I was walking into as in Dallas. I was walked into a Jersey Mike's Subway shop in Dallas, and I'm on Foursquare checking in, and it pops up saying, "Hey, we see you're standing in line over there at Jersey Mike's," and the Subway place across the street was saying, "Come over here and get." Wow.
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
know?
it really was. I think there was a missing golden moment for us to be able to do that.
Yeah.
Either was discouraged by the platforms that had power, or it was just never developed by them, so they didn't allow others to develop it any farther than they did. But I think that, going back to your Foursquare analogy, Foursquare screwed up when they split it up. When they split up the whole mayor of something and how many people are there and stuff, and then they took Foursquare and did it as more of a TripAdvisor-esque review stuff, like, hey, here's your favorite places you might want to go, compared to just checking in a gamification of, can I get to be the mayor of this location kind of thing. I think
that getting bought by Google, right? Foursquare is now Google
data.
And they're using that for a lot of their location-based.
Yep, it's all data. I mean, that was really the key element to that, was all data. But going back to that, I think what would be very interesting is the ability to get real time. Like I was saying, we're very much into this real engagement thing. Twitter's great, but it's a massive fire hose. And unless you know how to filter it when you're looking for stuff, even then it's a massive jibber jabber jabber. Having something that really facilitates what you might be directly interested in at the moment that you need it, based on time of day, based on where you're at, based on what you're there for, whether it's your home area or versus your travel area or something, and using all that good, intelligent capabilities to say, hey, it's lunchtime, you love ham subs, and here are 3 immediate areas around you. Here's pro cons. This has all of this. This is the negative. They don't have this or whatever it is. They can't, we were always good about green good, red bad. We've never really pushed that into a kind of review process that's concise. Like, hey, you're by such and such. I mean, AR. Remember when AR was going around? You could hold up.
Oh yeah, Yelp was doing that.
Yelp, yeah, and you go around, and it was just crazy because it was like X-ray vision. It was showing you stuff 3 blocks away. And you're like, it's right there. No, it's not. That's an office. It's right there. It's an office. No, because it's 3 blocks through the office. It was nascent in its development. It never really got much farther in that kind of scale. But the opportunity for that, I think maybe all of what I'm talking about, and I know I'm just going off on weird rabbit holes on this, when AR becomes more of a wearable item for us that's not geeked out with Google glasses or things, but it's built into what we're doing. I don't want to go all dark sky with the contact lenses and stuff, but hey, maybe where you can look around and see and get shown what you would find interesting of it. Like, I'm hungry, and then all of a sudden it's showing you your options. We do know voice interactivation is capable. We do know the technology of viewership of AR is available. These things might be something. I mean, it's science fiction now, but
the Google glasses were a great idea, but they were awkward, right? So it's, how do you have the user interface with that technology that doesn't encumber you, and it doesn't make you feel like you're walking around with a cone on your head or something?
Yeah, there was a bad slang for Google glassware, so I won't mention on the show. Begin with glass and end with old. Anyways, all right, sorry, technology tangent to that end. In reality, with marketing right now, I know that we were on I am on this aspect of, and even noticed it from Robert's list of informations and so forth, where he has an article about some of the information about why some of the hotels in New York haven't even reopened is because it's cheaper to keep them closed than it is to open up a union hotel. I'm not against unions, don't get me wrong. I just, when that turns into a financial prohibitive that you can't bring people back to work because it costs too much to bring them back to work based on the infrastructure you have to go under, that's a challenge. A lot of hotels are in receivership, not bankruptcy. Why? Because everyone realizes the asset has value. It's just right now it's not usable. So they don't want to jeopardize the quality of the asset by letting it sit and rot compared to, okay, financially we're going to take more control, but keep things running kind of thing, kind of mentality to it. I think this kind of was very reminiscent to me of 2001, where they learned their lesson. There was so many hotels in Orlando that just had to board up, and they rotted. I mean, literally degraded the physical brick and mortar because the banks didn't want to carry any cost associated with them. They got the hotels back, and I think the banks learned from this that it's better to keep a hotel functioning at some level, even if it's on life support, than it is to go over and just let it sit and rot until somebody wants to pick up then a diminished asset. So this brings me to my topic, long way around it, is now that we are at where we are with COVID, the definitions of failure are beginning to get more succinct. It was very easy to refer to our business troubles categorically under COVID. It's COVID. That's what did it to us. COVID hit our market. COVID did this. COVID did that. And, we wanted to amplify the tragedy of COVID, I think, in some ways, by throwing so much into the hopper of what COVID did to us. It isn't that it was inaccurate, but we weren't clear as to some of the mechanics with this, like the New York labor thing. Yes, municipally wise, there was lots of businesses were closed. They didn't shut the hotels down, but they sure made it almost near impossible to operate. Other regionalities, because municipalities, you couldn't open your restaurant and so forth, which goes to another article that we can touch on with Robert about ghost kitchens taking on so much now. But what are your thoughts about that? Because I think now we're going to get more succinct stories out of people's rebirth and or reasons why they're in the jeopardy that they're in. What do you think?
Well, I think what that will eventually, let's just call an elephant here if we can. Some of the people that were negatively impacted by COVID would have just as likely been negatively impacted by something else.
Right.
There are some businesses that were just going to do poorly. Okay. I'm not picking on anybody. That's just reality. Right. And so we've had COVID as a crutch that we could blame it on COVID for a year. And now we're going to come out of that. And yeah, there's going to be some that we just realize, well, you probably wouldn't have made it anyway. And you can no longer blame it on this. But the other thing that's going to happen is where I think we're going to start seeing, as we're trying to get everything back in operation now, what challenges do we have to get everything back to that? Just like you said, that Union Hotel where I can't bring everybody back to work, right? So yeah, I want to get my theme park back up and running, but holy cow, my suppliers for my churros are no longer shipping, right? And so what other complications do you have in trying to get such a huge operation back up to 100%? It's not just as easy as opening the door.
It's true. And the landscape for it is by far different. I think, and I'm not trying to be positive to a negative or anything like this, there has been, for lack of just being agnostic to it, a culling of the herd, where there were a lot of businesses that were over leveraged based on the expectations of what revenues they could attain based on historicals of what they've been able to conflate. There was a lot of businesses that were not doing all that they could or should be doing. And it reminds me reminiscently of the IHG branding issues that they faced now almost 20 years ago, where they had lowered their brand enforcement standards to create such a issue with brand quality that they lost their brand identity and were very ambiguous. And people didn't really trust going into a Holiday Inn at the time was going to truly be, what they expected based on brand. I think in some ways, what we have gone through with COVID has amplified that into a degree, that there's a lot of hotels that were just hanging on, oversaturation, brand saturation, market saturation. There was just a lot of that.
We will prune a few things out. I see Richard's comment on that. There's a difference between dying with COVID and dying of COVID. Those are two different things.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's very true. And we all that's not the right word. We all amplify the dramaticness of some things. We all have. It's like storytelling. The events themselves may not have been dramatic at its moment, but they are retold in a dramatic way. The thing that happened to you happened, and as later on you tell the story as if it was, the asteroid hit the planet, the dinosaurs died, the spaceships landed, all these things happen when really it was just bad business, and the timing hit at a time when it wasn't really a way that could be adjusted for. You're right, and this does not take away this. We're not talking about the tragedy of the human tragedy of COVID. This not even, because even getting sick is in itself horrid, let alone the loss of people and so forth. This is business stuff. I got caught where my restaurant just dried up, and then municipal said I couldn't seat anybody for a while. And then I could only seat 25% of people. Knowing firsthand, as owner of restaurants and running restaurants and opening restaurants for people, there are some people that should not be running a restaurant. Just saying.
Yeah, you know what? I'll raise my hand. I'm one of those. I would have no business running a restaurant.
Some people that are successful in their occupations feel that they can be successful in all their chosen occupations, and some people can, but don't. And just because you have grandma's recipe to spaghetti sauce does not mean you can run an Italian restaurant. You don't know about table zoning and table flow and workflow kitchens and marketing of and recipe variations and recycle rate and closed cycles of product usage and all the mechanics associated with restaurant running. So those kind of businesses that were kind of just running on the auspices or the breath of what they keep getting infused to. Yes. The tragedy was businesses that were great businesses that were just wrong place, wrong time, wrong circumstances. The perfect storm losses, huge, or not even, they don't even have to be huge, but great establishments that, I think of New York when I keep referring to these thought processes. There were some amazing restaurants that have been around for decades, long, and then just institutions. Now, were they the best restaurants in their heyday here and there? Yes. Were they the best restaurants compared to right now? Oh, who knows? It's by preference. But they were established. They were icons of the city that had to close because literally they were told they can't serve. It's hard to run a business. I don't care how much money you have in the coffer, but if you're burning money just to keep a rent paid or a lease paid and what have you, eventually you're going to run out if there's not a refill of that finance. And unfortunately, there was a lot of businesses that got caught with that. I'm hoping that they rebirth and Phoenix out of this. But even talking about agency associations, HSMEI, all these other ones, they're going through massive transitions right now. Yep. Their whole concept and brand, and what they offer and what they weren't built for and so forth. What I saw Richard post something. Okay, yes, make sure we hit all the things that Richard threw in there. With that, I guess on a positive note, because we obviously have beaten the concept of why some people are in circumstances that they are, what is it that can be done now? I mean, as in end of February, going into March, numbers are coming down in some ways. The other numbers aren't. There's still there's things we don't know. They're going to come around. I still got to open the doors on a business today, tomorrow. Mm-hmm. What do I do?
Yeah, if we had the $1 million answer to that, we'd all be rich, I think. That is a challenging, and there is no one answer that covers everybody. That's the first thing, by the way. There is no one answer. So the first thing is there has to be a unique answer to every business, every individual, and so on. And you have to find what that answer is. We've talked a lot on this show about how the fact that discounting doesn't generate demand. Maybe you generate a little more attention, but there's 100 people coming to your city. Okay. The fact that you have a higher or lower rate doesn't change the fact that there's 100 people coming to your city. Now, it might change the share of one of those 100 people that you get, but there's still only 100 people coming, right? So now we have to decide, how do we generate that demand? How do we partner with other people? By the way, you're not the only one looking for demand. So there's other, if you're a hotel, there's restaurants out there, there's movie theaters, there's stage theaters. There's all kinds of things that are around you who are also trying to get business as things reopen. How can you partner with them especially if you're a limited service hotel, because we talk a lot about all these ancillary things and all these great things you can do if you're a full service hotel. But what if you're just you have a room, you don't even have a pool at the property, right? What do? Well, partner with somebody that does have these things, and how can you help generate that demand? Because we know that drive market is going to be your most immediate area that you're going to get demand from, right? So how can you promote yourself within that market, within a drive radius, and help generate that demand, but work with other people to do that as well, because they need help just like you do.
Rich just pops up. 50 million people have had first show. Oh, okay, he's going to shots. So we'll go back to that in just a second. Just, I'm going to challenge something you just said, Dean, as to a rethinking of current thinking. We have always, as an industry, said you cannot generate demand. You can acquire a larger percentage of that demand by being strategic and what have you, and smart and so forth. But to your point, and even by the very example you gave, I have 100 people coming into my market. We're taking into account that is a defined value proposition. Our market draws this much.
Right.
That's the demand.
Right.
There's this much demand. I would challenge the concept that we are in a different, I'm going to use a word that I make up, paradigm, but paradigm. That we know that there is a emergence out of what we're in right now that is going to be very fluid based on the conditions of demand. That area is safer in my mind to travel to. That area has freed up restrictions that I'm more interested in taking advantage of than XYZ others. So the demand to market is in flux on with different modifiers that have not existed prior to this time.
There's a lot of dependencies. Yeah.
Right. There's a lot of, before it was like, if I'm going to Duluth, I'm going to Duluth. Duluth knows how many people they usually have each year. They know how many times people come for a particular month. They come usually on average based on event. They come on event based on business. There's numbers.
Yeah.
We kind of know how many people, and we already know how many hotel rooms are there. We already know how many people we can handle. There's lots of finite numbers associated with that. Now Duluth is in a different position. Wonder if Duluth turns into the mecca of happy, safe, happy lands, and that they have something they've never had before in a way that they haven't had it, and so forth. Yes, there's still a quantity of inventory, finite. Okay. But the amount you can charge for what people do might be the variable to it. Like, wow, everybody, like when a Super Bowl hits a town, I don't know, you've dealt with clients, as well, that is their benchmark of apex goodness. They're, to this day, whether it's Olympics, whether it's Super Bowl, the most ADR compared to occupancy is the ding, that's the top of the pile, because they were able to demand their rack on the door and get it and fill every freaking room. And if they could put cots in the hallway, they could have done it, kind of thing. That's kind of what I'm saying is, even though we can't, quote, generate demand, I think we can influence it now more than we've ever been able to, because if you're a smart marketer and you realize that your destination market or your market, not destination market, but your market has a unique value proposition that it didn't have before in comparison to other markets that you used to compete with, that is in fact, you can influence the demand. You can make people aware of the fact that you have whatever it is that they're looking for, because there's few places for these people to go to. You now turn to be that place in demand.
Sure.
And
we've seen that change even in 2020, right? Where people were no longer going to see the play on Broadway in New York City. Instead, they were going to see the Grand Canyon, right? So there was definitely a shift. And if I'm somebody at the Grand Canyon, I can say, yeah, here I am. Guess what? There's nobody around.
Right.
Plenty of distancing here. Come on over. Right.
Mm-hmm. I do want to pick up what Richard pointed out. He said 50 million people have had their first shot, which most are 65 and over. Most of working business people still have not gotten this shot and will not have for another 4 to 8 months. Businesses will take quite a while to get back. It is true. I would caveat that. I totally agree, first off. And it's frustratingly slow. I have friends that are all of the age they can get the vaccine. The lottery feel level that this is going through of getting up at the crack of dawn for these people to get on computers that normally flat out they're retired. They don't really need to be jumping on a computer at 6 a.m. To start banging away trying to get in on a appointment to get a shot, and then to go through this whole dried up thing, and then we got a governor down here who decides to want to play God by saying, "Oh, you don't like me? I'm not going to send you vaccines over there. Yeah, you don't like me, you're not going to lower flags for somebody I want to lower flags for. No vaccines for you." It's unfortunately just it's like a bad TV show, and that's in some ways. But yes, to the impact of, I think also there's a lot of young people that are working that they have to work, whether they get a shot or not. They got to go. If they got a job compared to maybe their friends that don't or people that don't, they're going to put themselves at unnecessary risk in their mind, but they're still going to end up doing it, which is the sad tragedy of a lot of this is people are putting themselves in harm's way, not because they're martyrs or anything like that. It's because they have no other option. It's not like they can sit back and say, "Oh, I can buy some time. I got money. I can sit back." They don't. The food lines are crazy. I mean, insanely crazy. And that's for the people that have cars. What about the people that don't? What are the people, there's friends that actually literally will drive their car for a bunch of other people just to pile it up with as much as they can to bring back to people that can't even make it out. We have yet to hear the stories of everything yet. Just like we saw what happened with Texas, we saw it at first person point of view initially, and now we're finding even more tragedies of the absurdity of the mishandling of these things that happened, and people were to suffer for it. So let's see, Virginia, regarding demand, can you talk more about those people who have found your hotel call but not booked yet? Those folks are low-hanging fruit. What are some best practices, ways of converting them? Also, utilizing systems like Navis, are they working for others? Okay,
great question.
Let's unpack. We'll take the first one. Can you talk more about those people who have found your hotel called but not booked yet?
Yeah.
There is a boatload of tools. I already know what I'm going to. Go ahead. What do you want to contribute to that?
We're probably going down the same path, actually. So, my first question is, what channel are we talking about? We're talking about voice reservations? Are we talking about somebody that your sales department was reaching out to? Or are we talking about digital or e-commerce where they came through those channels, right?
I'm going to guess for Virginia, you can clarify for us. I think you're talking about people that reached out to the hotel via phone.
Okay.
Have yet to actually, they didn't book on that calls. But they didn't book on that call.
Okay. So one of the first things I recommend there is, and you see this within the digital environment, right, is trying to get at least some of their information right out the gate, however much that may be. Hi, who am I talking to? Oh, Dean Schmidt. Okay, great. Is there a phone number I can reach you back at? Is there an email address, anything like that? Getting that information right out the gate, because it's the same model that your digital follows, right? Somebody gets to your website, the very first thing you're doing, first thing you're doing is getting a cookie. Second thing you're doing is getting their name and trying to get an email address, so that if we don't succeed in converting you here, I've got something to go back to. So that would be one of the first things. Within the digital world, remarketing is extremely valuable because it's extremely effective. Now, that doesn't mean that from a telemarketing standpoint that they called your hotel and now you should become the we're trying to extend your car warranty guy. But it does mean that you want to be able to capture that information and have it in a database. If absolutely nothing else, at least gives you some insight as to what type of trends you're seeing, that, hey, all of a sudden on Thursday, we had 100 calls asking about bookings 2 weeks out. What's going on, right? So using whatever data you have and being able to then take that in and leverage it towards your sales efforts if possible.
I completely agree with you. I would go a little bit more on a higher perspective, just because there are semantics as to how you handle calls, and we'll get to the Navis conversation as an example. And Navis is not alone in this, but Navis is very good at this, in all fairness. Matter of fact, I'll be speaking at the Navigate conference, I think next week. It's a very cool topic. But again, not pitching Navis, just as an example of using this stuff. The big question that when you develop a website, and I'll use this example, one of the most profound questions I was ever able to put on a website is when somebody came to the website and they looked like they were leaving the website, I have a little part, did you find what you're looking for? If not, what was it? To help us to make sure that we were putting proper content on the website. This goes back a few years. A call is kind of the same thing. They're calling for a reason. They don't start their dialogue, I will stay with you if I get the right price. They don't tell you the tell. I will stay with you if you can get me into the spa at 2:00 on Tuesday if I were to book with you through Wednesday. They don't tell you what is the pivot point of the decision product, because they may not even know themselves, but they have a good sense of what it is. If they hear what they want to hear, they're going to convert. If they don't hear what they want to hear, or it doesn't support what they thought they were going to get, they won't book. So a lot of what Dean just said about converting them to a means of communication is very paramount to the idea of, maybe we can't hit all the points you need to hear now, but if I can create some sort of connection to you that we can continue this dialogue,
Yeah.
then that's a good thing. So the first intent of all this, as Dean points out, is like, make sure that we can connect with you. The pushback is a lot of people don't want to add, they don't want to offer up something more until they get what they want by first coming to you. So sometimes you have to find out a way of getting them the content. This is either through debriefing questions with them, or whether you simply can tell what they come to, which brings us to the Navis conversation. Navis, in their interface, has it that if you're responding to an ad that's put out there, it comes up on the screen to the person picking up the phone for you. They know that you're looking at XYZ ad. Also, a well-integrated Navis program will also, if they indicate by their phone number who they are, like they're calling from a phone number that's recognized, it'll pull up the data of that person. Did they stay before? Did they bring other people with them? What did they do with you? What were the dates of those things? Navis actually gets a good job of pulling this stuff, that they have an anti-spooky factor, that they make sure that they don't spook the person by, oh, Lauren, yeah, how's the missus doing? And da 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 da. And you know that spa massage that you had there, we can do that again. You'd be like, whoa, whoa. you know, so they tone it to the dialogue that's with the guest, but they know more about the guest than they're alluding to by in the discussion. The key element to the calls is, if you're not just taking a booking, if they're not calling over, hi, I need to stay with you on the 10th and 11th, blah, blah, blah. What's the best rate you can give me? Blah, blah, blah. Typical dialogue. If it's not that, if it's, hey, look, I'm thinking about coming in the 10th, 11th. What do you have available? And by asking the right questions, well, how many people are traveling with you? Do you need a set, what kind of bedrooms do you need? Is there a particular view you would like? Is there anything that you're doing? Whatever it is, if you start that process of integrating them into what you can offer, going back to that lighthouse lantern conversation, instead of just broadcasting, well, we have this rate, we have this, instead of like, what is it that you are looking for that I can provide? That change in marketing, I think, is the key element to that. Keep in mind too, now going to the tool side, there are lots of tools that when they call, you immediately know the geography of their location. If you're advertising and you're using dynamic numbers in the advertising, you know what ad they're responding to.
Yeah.
And that information is available for data. And then this goes a lot to what Dean's saying. It's not so much about that single interaction that's the key element. You obviously want to convert them. It's the data of being able to connect with them, and the data about what they are as to why they would be connecting with you to begin with. That cultivation goes into the remarketing program that Dean referred to, as to, okay, I didn't book them when they called. They were at a certain level of discovery or a certain level of education that they were engaging with me. But I now have a resource to begin to expand more data for them. They were calling about the Lollapalooza Festival. Great. Let's connect them into the Lollapalooza Festival content. Oh, they're calling about a certain peak time because it's season. Great. They're coming because of that. That's usually a family thing. Let's share some content based on that as well. That's where the opportunity to change the interest of demand. The real trick to this, and Dean, I don't mean to go off on a tangent with this, is stealing somebody else's demand. Having them reach out to you directly is one thing, and just like we talked about, converting that and cultivating that into a more of a data, a knowledge of them. It's seeing what your competitors are doing, who your competitors are interacting with, and seeing how you can intercede in that conversation and dialogue and make them interested in you, even though they discovered your competitor first. That's the nuance.
Well, and we're pointing out at the point that they're on the phone with you, they've called you. How many phone calls do you think they're making, right? So that it's not like they're calling every property in town. No, they called you. There's a reason they called you. Now, this gets a little bit beyond technology and more into the human interaction part of things. and a training of your call center reps. Your call center reps are either on property, so you've got somebody on property, or they're a call center, a central call center. Even if you're a small independent hotel, you may work with a centralized call center somewhere. Make sure that you have taken trips to that call center and talked with those agents, because they have to know your property as well as you do. I can't emphasize enough how important that is. I used to do that back in the, I'm going to really date myself now, but like all the way back to about 2006, 2007, you used to take clients up to a call center that we worked with to help them present to the call center agents. Again, call center agents should never lie about, yeah, I'm on property. What's the weather like? Oh, I don't know. I'm in a room with no windows. Not to that kind of thing. But they should be able to say, oh, hey, Glenn, you're coming with your wife. We've got a spa here that's offering some special massage rates, or, whatever. And just being able to have that conversation with them, but you have to know the property well enough to do that. Even if, so likewise, then if you're on property, making sure that we've trained those agents. And this really kind of gets into Adele's world a little bit about the culture at the hotel. It sounds so simple, but it's not as easy as it sounds. And that is about training the agents to have that conversation with the potential guest. I can remember way back in the day, actually, I was doing some test calls. There's a term for those. Sorry, I can't think what that term is. The secret shopper calls, right? And so I was trying to see how did the voice agents work. And I was looking at a property in Hawaii, actually. And I was talking with the agent, and he came up, he pulled up his rooms that he had, and he offered me 2 of them. And I said, yeah, I think I want an ocean view. Very simple response. That's an excellent choice. Wait, what? Wow, I made an excellent choice. He agreed. Just simple little things like that can have such an impact. And again, they've called you. So
Right.
You got that opportunity. There's a reason why they called you. You have to find out what that is.
That's a very key element. They have to find out why they made you different than everybody else. But
Right.
I'll also go to the point that you mentioned about the dialogue with people. Richard just pointed out about Airbnb and the increased demand. I do want to hit that because, and Richard in Virginia, by the way, if you guys want to join in, you're more than welcome to. This is not just us jabbing back and forth. You guys are more than welcome to join in. I can ping your camera microphone on if you want. And if you're not camera ready in your mind, we can just leave the audio on if you want. This whole idea of calls versus other engagements. I don't know whether you all listen to callbacks and stuff. I mean, that's usually a technique of marketing. Like, are they following script? Are they following process? And there have been many cringeworthy moments. Oh, why'd they say that? Or, they didn't follow the script, whatever it is. Going to the human nature of all this, as you pointed out, Dean, there is a feeling that you feel that the person is connected, or they're automated.
Yes.
That they are responding because they're listening, or they're responding because they're trying to push you to a direction. And that difference is the difference of the value you squander in a call. If, as Dean made the example, when they say, well, I'm thinking about a beachfront view, not but we have the super deluxe by the ice machine one that's twice the value, but it's got a little noisiness thing, but that's the price value. Go with what they're interested in, but listen to what they're asking for. If you're like, well, the ocean view room, that's an amazing, but you were mentioning you want to do the golfing and so forth. Well, those units are not actually on the ocean side. If you're thinking about doing golfing every day, you're going to be taking a 5-minute walk or 10-minute walk over. At the end of the day, you can go out to our ocean club and be there as long as you like. But whatever it is, dialoguing with them to better make them understand, which is your purpose of answering the phone, better understand what it is they have the options to buy for, is a key element to this. Not whether you follow the script. Why, thank you, Mr. Dean. How many times we get frustrated for the outsourcing of call centers? I'm terribly sorry for your inconvenience.
Yeah.
Okay.
Rule number 1, especially in hospitality, if your agents are using a script, you've already lost.
Yeah.
Let me rephrase that. If they have to use a script, you already lost.
Right.
And I tell you what, I'm going to plug somebody here. And by the way, I have no affiliation with this company. And in fact, I'm connected with them on LinkedIn, but otherwise, nothing. There's a company out there, Doug Kennedy with Kennedy Training Network. He has been doing this for more than a decade of training call centers how to have those conversations with people. And we don't talk about that enough. We mentioned this on the Clubhouse yesterday, actually. We don't talk about that voice reservations channel enough.
Right.
And it's a smaller part than it used to be, but it's a critical part. And definitely make sure that you're
But it's a high conversion point because, as you pointed out earlier, they're calling you for a reason. They're at a stage of either high discovery education, which they could easily create that conversion of like, good, let's book it, or they're at a point of decision for acquisition and they're doing the final separation of church and state as to what they think they want versus what they need or what they compare you against. And yes, I wish Adele was with us today to talk about the cultural component of how that all dialogue goes on.
Even within digital marketing, the call center is it used to be really important that you always had a click to call on most of your digital ads out there. That used to be almost like standard plug-in. One of the problems that we ran into, though, is that call centers started saying, yeah, you know what, it's more expensive for me to have my call center take that call than it is for it to go through digitally. I actually had a call center tell me that one time. Because metasearch, by the way, that's one of the most underused components of metasearch. Did you know that metasearch has click to call? That and it's only on mobile, and hotels.com uses this a ton. And the idea is that if I'm driving to my destination, I sure as hell shouldn't be trying to book the reservation on my cell phone and drive at the same time, right? Whereas if I can just go dink and it calls them, I can book the room.
Right. Melissa made a good point to it, and it is very true. I was trying to get to that. I've never been below a 20% conversion on phone calls. Just, hey, Virginia, how are you?
Good. I'm probably going to turn my video off. How do I do that?
Oh, you're fine. I mean, rather than you break your fingers typing, I figured it's like, heck, just come on and talk. It's all good. But I do want to point out with Melissa that they said last hour from clients revenue booked over the phone is still equal, if not more, than online. Completely agree. The conversion value on phones has always outpaced conversion value on the internet for us. It's at a different level of conversion based on the communication point that it reflects on. So absolutely. Virginia, go ahead. I'm sorry. We invited you on.
Well, thank you. Thank you. So it's just a very interesting question. And I think that Adele, like you're saying, Adele and Amy would both have great input. I wish they were on today. Because it really is a marriage between, and y'all are amazing. It's a marriage between the sales and guest services. It's really interesting.
Yeah, no, I completely agree because we don't invest in enough to the ones that do the most talking for us, and we invest too little in the things that can do the best benefit for us in some strange ways. We're very much about new guest acquisition. Digital marketing is literally based on that creation of dialogue for people for awareness, engagement, and conversion. It's a fundamental 3-step process for most marketing. Less proportion is actually put towards retention, re-engagement, and reacquisition. The post-stay, recurring stay concept. People realize there's a value to it. They don't, but, and I think I made this up but I mean, we made this discussion in the show over a year ago. Marriott redefined lifetime value guests when they said it was only worth 4.2. Because what they basically said was because of the digital engagement and the shiny object mentality, the lifetime value of a guest is only on their 4th cycle. After that, they're considered a new guest. And that's almost a third less than the normal lifetime value proposition that used to be used in calculations of return guest value. So they basically said, due to the types of ways we're communicating with guests, we only say that their lifetime value is worth 4 converted interactions with us over a span of time. And after that, they're considered a new guest because we have to reinstitute our relationship with them. There's value of conversation to that, but really there was very much of I think it was a affirmation of the value of what brand was trying to say they offer, that they keep that continuation of dialogue and sense their higher value relationship that they offer. But I think it's also a bit of a reflection of times that people feel of the temporariness that we're brand agnostic a lot more than ever before. Yeah. We're brand empathetic, and we've done that to ourselves by how we treat people and being a frequency programs and or lack of value proposition. The fact that I walk in the door thinking I'm loyal to you guys, and like, who are you? Oh man, it's not even on your screen or something.
That's exactly it. I mean, we're talking about it. We've seen this increase of new guests that have come in, which is amazing. But now to get them to convert back and to come back and visit us again, of course, it comes down to what Adele has been working on for many years, like she's done at the library hotels, and a marriage between digital marketing and search and getting their information and retargeting and all of that stuff. But when it comes down to it, what's that incentive to get that new person to become a second and third and fourth and fifth booker? When it's an independent hotel, you don't have the luxury of what you're talking about with loyalty programs and all these other things. But what's the $1 million question that's going to get them to come back again? And I think everybody's different. They're coming for a different reason. They're not always, not everybody is coming to your hotel or your market, and every market's different.
And I don't mean to make this a contrite analogy. It's like a used car salesman. I walk up to the lot, and the salesman in the little glass window looking out doesn't know what I'm interested in yet. I mean, he has vans and cars and sports cars and SUVs and whatever. I've just pulled into the lot. Until I start walking towards the SUV, now he knows a little bit more what I'm interested in. And now when he comes out to talk to me, it's about that car, that one right there. Yeah. Or one like it. Or why am I interested in that kind of style of vehicle? And this goes to Joshua's point a little bit. When they call you up, you've been pointed out. Of all the people that are in that market, they've chosen to talk to you. And that's the key element to having that filter. At that moment, you could be anybody for any reason. Now you're very specifically interested in this particular, they're interested in you. And it gets squandered, unfortunately, sometimes by the automation that we put in front of people. And also, to Dean's point earlier, if you're having to script your team answering that, you've lost that uniqueness because you're only responding in a generic way. When I build a website, I literally, through the navigation, have to put everything on the table for you to choose from. What is it you're interested in? And then once you show what you're interested in, I can be better to show you this stuff. It's even, and then we do marketing to try to bring that down to, okay, if you're interested in this certain thing, let me show you this as soon as you come into my website. Calls are unique in that sense that they've already picked you. Make sure you listen to what they're picking you for. I think is probably the thing. Listen to ADR, Joshua. They'd say, and they're discovering what for Richard. It depends a lot on the type of hotel. I believe that the Marriott Resort doesn't have a huge repeat customer as compared to business hotel in the city with lots of yes. Okay, two things. One, we didn't get back to Richard's thing about the Airbnb creating demand by saying that they have business that would not be there if it wasn't if they wouldn't go to a hotel. It's an interesting logic statement because then I would say I have an RV park and they wouldn't have come to my destination had I not had an RV park. It's like saying, Mount Rushmore, people wouldn't go to Mount Rushmore if the cliff faces weren't there. You're creating the interest in your market. And so you're creating a purpose for people to travel. I have a hard time with it because in my interpretation of creating demand is that you're creating purpose of interest. So putting a Mount Rushmore monument up means that, I'm giving you a reason to come to where I'm at because I have this crazy cool statue stuff behind me. The same reason why if COVID made my market palatable because I have less restrictions and higher safety, and that's something that's a trigger point for somebody, I can expand my demand due to that in comparison to places that don't have that offering. So I think from an exposure of increasing or being able to influence demand, as I was saying, I think it's about being able to properly represent the purpose of interest that you have a value for by pointing these things out. It's not about how many rooms you have or what your rate is, which has been that beacon mentality from before. Hey, Mr. Butler.
Hey, guys. How are you?
Oh, no, Stuart's here.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, I'm only here because of Dean's shirt.
Yeah, right.
I wore it just for you, man.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Virginia, please meet Stuart. I think you already know him, but, just in case. Virginia was kind enough that she was banging away at the chat room. So we're like, just come on, quick.
Hey, Virginia. How are you?
Good. How are you?
But we were talking about, I had raised the proposition that I think now more than any other time.
Now more than ever.
Now more than ever, we can influence demand compared to our modicum written in stone. You can't influence demand. You can only garner your percentage of it or increase your percentage of it.
Not only can we, but we must. We have to. The reality is that demand is going to be lower. the compression that was often caused in many markets by group travel, business travel, doesn't exist. And everyone's going to be fighting for leisure travel. And so you can take your piece of that, but you can also be smart and go create your own piece of it as well.
Yeah. Richard also threw out there the fact that where this is, it depends a lot on the type of hotel when it comes to demand. I believe the Maui Marriott doesn't have a huge repeat customer as compared to a business hotel in the city with lots of companies playing. And to that, I'd say yes, but it lends itself to the conversation I'm having, which is the demand is the aspirational perspective of what that hotel represents. You know, it isn't. I've been to Maui, and I can honestly say there's amazing hotels there. I can't tell you what's different between each one. And that's, to me, a fall down on what the hotels did to represent themselves when I was needing to travel to that market. I knew I was going to go to the market. And I know there's lots of great options. And it wasn't about a price rate. For that kind of travel, it's sensitivity to price, obviously. But it's not like, oh, I'm going to go there because of $20 compared to there. If I found a reason why that $20 justified being there. And I think that's a fall down of how the hotels represented themselves. They represent themselves in the market, but then they represent why they were different in the market, which goes to why I think you sometimes compete with the wrong people, to be honest with you.
I would also point out too that in that example, if I am going to the Marriott in Maui now, there's a high likelihood that I am probably somewhat loyal to Marriott as a brand. Because I can go to Maui, and if I'm going to Maui, I'm doing a lot of homework on where I'm staying. Now, there's different things that are going to influence that. I want a beachfront resort, or I want something on a volcano, or whatever the case may be. So those factors, of course, are going to come into play. But I would say that there's a higher likelihood that if I'm going to that Maui Marriott, that I'm already a loyalty member of Marriott, as opposed to if I'm going to Omaha, Nebraska, and I happen to stay at the Marriott, that was just location, rate, conference was there, whatever the case may be.
Yeah, but I think it goes beyond just that. I think it's also, a risk mitigation.
Uh-oh. Did he freeze? He froze to you too?
Especially if you stay.
There he is.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I got you.
All
You
right.
just froze for a second.
Am I
Sorry.
still here?
Yeah.
Sorry. I was just saying there's a trust factor too, right? That you have a set of expectations with a Marriott based on your previous experience. And if Marriott's done their job and you've stayed at 3, say, Spring Hill Suites, you're a lot more likely to stay at that in the new city because it takes away a lot of the risk of the uncertainty of staying somewhere else.
Yes, I definitely do not disagree with that fact. And that comes to the familiarization of what your expectations are, which goes to one of my conversations about the stupid factor, where people begin to lower their standards to maintain cost efficiencies. The worst thing that you can do.
Oh, that spiral into chaos.
Yeah, I'm going to lower my standards because it's going to save me a dime now. But then you're still purporting that you are this flagged property, and people come in and the staffing's been reduced to an insufficient level for serviceability. The product's not been maintained at a level of brand standard of expectation what brought them there, perhaps, expecting that it's going to be whatever flag you're buying. Those are stupid decisions because it impacts you, and it also impacts their entire perspective of the market they're coming into and other brands that are similar to you in that market as well. Hold on.
Whether you're branded or not, we've all seen these.
No, I was just going to say a perfect example of that, and I will give kudos to this property every single time I can. Pre-COVID, one of the last business trips I went on, I was at the Home 2 Suites in Addison, Texas. Great job, guys, if any of you are listening. I'm talking about hospital-grade cleanliness, sterilization before COVID ever hit, right? So, perfect example. If I'm ever going back there, I know the place I want to go to, right? You have that trust, that factor that goes with that.
Joshua, well, yeah, actually, you bring up a good point that I would like to bring up, and that is right now, and this is consumer sentiment, this is reviews, this is culture. These are the things that we talk with Adele about. This is the things we talk about with Amy and so forth about proper service staffing and quality of a product and everything else that they do. When you go to a place and they meet your expectations, it's not what you write home about. Yes, they got a plastic shield up. And yes, I thought they were wearing masks. Yeah, I saw them wipe some stuff down. And I'm just using this example in relationship to safety. Compared to, oh my God, this place, I felt like I was going to a surgical room. Everything was amazing. They were on time. I mean, everything was being cleaned all the time. Or whatever. I mean, I'm not saying that's what everybody wants, but if that's what your interest or concern is, if you go above and beyond the we did it mentality, or we did what we were asked to do mentality, that's the memorable story. Going back to our Flip 2 with Ed conversations, that's the stuff that gets shared is these guys are great because they're going to tell their friends that are like them, thinking the way they do is like, look, if you're going to go somewhere and you want to feel safe that they're on top of their cleaning game, this is it. These people were, you know what, remember Stuart, when he was talking about going to, what was it, Universal? It was Universal, right? Or was it of Disney? Which one was it that everybody was mandated to wear the masks and that they enforced them? They're going to kick them out of the Universal. Was it?
He went to Universal and Disney, and he was saying how much more effective Universal was than
was it
Disney.
okay? You know, that's the story. It wasn't that Disney didn't do what they were expected, and maybe even beyond what normally other people are doing. It was that Universal did it so much better in his mind.
Yeah. It's tough though, right? Because if you set an expectation that is extreme, right? It's easy to surprise and delight someone the first time, but then you've re-anchored where their expectation level.
Yeah, I mean, it very much so to that.
You don't set something that's unattainable, right? And you look at TripAdvisor. We've had clients that have done well, and they've gradually crept up to the #1 spot over time, and they've earned it. They've earned the #1 spot in their destination on TripAdvisor, and then all of a sudden you see this kind of rebound from that, where the expectations were, well, this is a 3-star property, but it does a really good job. It exceeds my expectations. I'm going to have a 5-star. But now that it's #1, people's expectations have shifted, and now they're like, this needs to be like blow my mind to deserve 5 stars, and it never quite lives up, even though nothing. Expectations. So you got to be careful.
Yeah, I want to go, Josh, we'll get back to you. Just saying, Richard brings up a point that I'd like to address where he says, so I mean that the typical guest is going to resort to an expensive place like Maui, probably will not return in their lifetime. Some places are once in a life, those kind of places are sort of once in a lifetime adventures or experiences versus a business type hotel that lives on repeat business. I will agree with you in statement. I will disagree in methodology. And I say this for one particular reason. If I can totally impress that once in a lifetime traveler to their once in a lifetime experience, that is what will get me their friends, because that is what they will share with the people that will get them to stay with me. Yes, that one person may never come back again. Absolutely agree. But that is the story that they will share. Oh, if you go to Milan, you must stay at this hotel because
Yeah, we're all travel agents. We're all, that's what it is.
Yeah, it's not just about that one repeat guest, but I completely agree with you, Richard. It's like, yeah, that one business guest, I got to go to Des Moines. Yeah, I want him to come back every time, or she comes back to Des Moines. Yes, I want to be that good that he, when they come in to do business, repeat. I want them to be in my hotel, and I want to make that experience incredibly awesome for them to want to do that and share it with their other business travelers. The same methodology, with business travelers, dude. Whatever. When you come to Des Moines, I will hook you up. I'll let you meet Bob at the front desk, man. He's crazy. He's great. You know, they do everything for you. They're fantastic.
Yeah, and keep in mind too that the consumers are predictable in a lot of ways. You know, you can't always predict what an individual's going to do, but en masse, you can make assumptions about how a group of people are going to behave, and this is why casinos are as profitable as they are. And so I'd say even if you know that, you know, you might not win that individual specific.
He's paused again.
They're going to better. Do I need to turn off my video?
I think maybe your feed is a little on the, whoop. There you go.
Can you hear me still?
Yep, we got you.
All right, I'm just going to turn off my camera. I came back to the office today for the first time in a while, and my internet is not great. But you can do things to make sure that more than your fair share of that type of traveler are going to choose you, and that might be having a conversation with them about why they chose you, the one that did, but it might also be partnering with a handful of other properties in your area that you're friendly with, and you know, you can't necessarily have a Marriott site that partners with other attractions and properties and driving people to your property and to other properties. A lot of people have had a lot of success with that kind of strategy. So you can be a demand generator, and you can answer the questions that groups of people are going to have based on your target market, and you can drive a lot of incremental business that way, even if you're in Hawaii.
True. Joshua points out, and I think, Stuart, you've been a vanguard of this for a long time. He refers to the personalization you were mentioning about calls to the hotel are now shifting to hotel messages. If you automate, you can miss it if it isn't specific enough. And if you don't answer it, it can cause animosity from the guest to be frustrated by not getting their questions answered. Mm-hmm. You've been a proponent of this for a long time, Stuart. You and I have actually gone back and forth in different dialogues as to how bots, messenger bots, and things can be used both effectively and totally ineffectively.
Yeah, and there's a time and a place for technology. In you got to anticipate what the guest's intent is, and always. And we talked about this week a lot on Clubhouse and with the little rooms that we've been doing. Is if you're not going to do something on property or in person, then you shouldn't do it online. So your question that you have, you don't want to automate your phones. Then why in the world would you automate a chat on your website? Because it's the same people that are asking those questions. And we know that technology is good, but it's not perfect at this point. And so why wouldn't you put the resources into it that you're putting into your phone system, into your front desk, onto some kind of chat system on your website? It just makes no sense.
Yeah, and all of us have shared the frustration of calling someplace, going into their automated phone call system in which you have to listen to disclaimers, redirection, and then, you know, don't worry, everything changed. And it's like, really? Because it sounds the same as it did 6 months ago.
Have you ever left
Let's tell you about our COVID policy.
Right. Have you ever left an automated phone, tree and said, I'm really glad they pushed me into that and that I didn't get to speak to a person? Right. Not once. So why would you assume that's the way?
Yeah. And a lot of those tools were meant because of volume handling. Now, this is where you and I diverge a little bit. First off, right now, I think the usage of bot and messengers and so forth.
You mean this is where I'm right and you're wrong?
Yeah, pretty much. Well, kind of right. Maybe quasi. Right now is not the time to create a technology intervention. Just isn't. We should be able to handle conversation and dialogue for two reasons. One, we have the time. Two, we have the need to be interactive and not dismissive, and or we don't deal with the volume that we need to have this type of automation put into place. That said, I think the other aspect is some people aren't ready for that dialogue because they don't want to be hard pressed into decisions. They want information. They don't want to, I don't want to buy anything right now. I don't want to tell you I don't want to buy anything now. Quit trying to ask me what I want to buy. I don't want to. I want to know more about things. Unfortunately, we don't often know what they're interested in, and this kind of technology sometimes help if put in context as that. Like, you're on XYZ page for XYZ information. Maybe it's event driven, maybe it's specific to amenity or services or whatever. Having a level 1 bot that can answer questions based on the fact that there's just nobody wants to read 5 paragraphs of information. They just want a simple answer to something, with the caveat that you follow the 3 rules of bots, which is don't act like you're a human, don't get in the way of talking to a human, and always make it available to talk to a human. If you do that, but say, here, I'm here to be helpful, maybe I can give you your answer if you can't see it, then that's a helpful.
And I mean, there's a time and a place for automation, right? I mean, a live bot, AI-powered live bot is not that much different than a search engine. And obviously, Google doesn't have a bazillion people answering our queries when we type in to the search query. So hotels should absolutely have their own search bot for those people. Someone, they're just curious, right? They're just tire kickers, or they're looking for more information.
Yeah.
You need some bandwidth.
You have to have access, like you said, Lauren, to real people. Let me try changing to a different connection.
Yeah, it sucks. You know, you give me grief about the fact just when you're making that really strong point, you just zone out and like,
Right when he's about to give us the formula for alchemy, and
right. How do you make gold out of lead? And poof, there you go.
sorry, you missed it.
Yeah, Richard's saying you need to type. Yeah, but to that end, and this is all balancing act because you know when people ask us, we've been with the live show that we do, the podcast and the emails I get from the podcast. Now we're doing Clubhouse, which is more of an audio dialogue back and forth and so forth. People want answers like, so how do I do that? There's a base level of doing it. Like, hey, you want to know how to build a bot? Sure, here's how you build a bot. But is it best for you based on what you're wanting to use it for? Probably not. Because, and Stuart, I'm gonna quote you again. If you're not doing the basics, don't be messing with no bots.
Mm-hmm.
Get your content correct, get your SEO correct, get your organization correct, your navigation correct, get that correct, get your team engaged and involved and educated and communicative and responsive. Get your ad campaign specific to what it is you're dealing with honest and sincere.
You can't handle the bots.
You can't handle the bots. Then if you want to play with the toys and gizmos that we keep ranting about, then do that. But don't be messing with them right now if you're not doing all that other stuff. How's that? Did I channel you? Oh, you're
and it's not that bots are bad inherently, right?
Oh, there you go. Now I hear you, but you're on lag.
Man. Not that bots are bad, inherently bad or evil, right? There's a place for them, but to your point, you got to do the fundamentals first. And if you don't have a live chat with real people, don't worry about a bot yet.
Yeah, it's very true. Hey, so since you jumped in with us, Virginia's still with us. Did you see Robert's little list and stuff? There was some interesting aspects to his list that he always had. Whether he intends it or not, there's always seems to be a lean into his list. Like he seemed to dwell or focus on an angle of stuff. I don't know whether you felt that way from this one as well or not.
I haven't read it. I'll be honest.
No, it's fine. No, it's.
You're talking about Rock Cheetah.
What's that, Virginia? I'm sorry.
Did you say Robert's Rock Cheetah list? Is that what
Yeah, that list.
I missed it today.
He just got it out, which for the past couple of weeks, the dude's been so busy, and that's very, very unlike Robert. Robert usually is good about at least getting out. Maybe not on the same time, but he always got it out. But he's been so busy, as he said, with some pretty big stuff that he hasn't been able to get the list out until this week is the first one in a month, actually, that he's been able to get it out. But I think we started the show a little bit early we were talking about the fact that there are some lean-tos to this that I think we're going to get more specific stories as to what happened to some businesses rather than just them being attributed to COVID is the deeper explanations as to what exactly was more direct impacts. Case being like, some hotels aren't opening in New York because it's cheaper to stay closed than it is to engage with union labor. Again, not against unionization, union labor in any way, just that's a shame that those business considerations financially have to be in play to a point where a business won't actually open for that. And or restaurants that were not adaptive in how they reached their guests or customers. And now ghost kitchens have dominated market space for where restaurants once used to. I think that's a temporary circumstance in some ways, because people go to restaurants not just because of the uniqueness of the food potentially of that particular restaurant. It's the experience of being in that restaurant. That's something that ghost kitchens, deliveries, and what have you can't do unless somebody finds a way that they can translate that into an experience that can be shipped. Like, we're going to come to your place and you have enough room that we can cater it, where you can have your own private kind of dining if you have enough people. But not everybody does that. Some people, it's just you and your significant other that you go out and have dinner with. You're not trying to create a party. You just want the experience of going to some place that isn't you sitting at your dining table. And that's not going to ever be replaced by delivery and pickup services.
But
were there any articles that you liked on his list? Wanted to pick up?
That was more of the theme aspect of what he had. Obviously, there was some announcement. I mean, we didn't talk about it last week, even though it was last week's news. Sendine sucking up Next Guest. I have a mixed bag about that. I mean, And
So next guest was what? That was previously Hebs, right? Is that the same company?
Yeah, previously Hebs. Next
Yeah.
guest. Now it's a part of Sendyne. Sendyne, we already knew it was very cash heavy with a lot of investments, so they had money to, I wouldn't say burn, but they had money to acquire. And I'm not saying I'm in any way
So
insightful.
didn't Sendyne also buy?
Oh, he just dropped off again.
Yeah, I did.
The secret formula.
Damn it, Alchemy. Stuart, what did they buy? What did they buy? What did they
Type it to us.
Do a Google search. You'll find it.
Didn't they buy Digital Alchemy a couple of years ago?
Yeah, that sounds familiar.
Haven't heard that name in a long time.
Yeah, and they also bought a consumer sentiment platform and something else. They've been on this buying spree, yes, before COVID, and this has probably been the biggest thing that I'm aware of that they've done since COVID's impact on us. But
never mind. It was TravelClick bought Digital.
Yeah, they Travel Click absorbed them, but I'm saying that they also bought an email platform as well. They also
Lexus, wasn't it Rainmaker? I think you're right.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
But
So that, as far as what is Next Guest?
Next Guest was an agency, but probably better ways.
Well, Hebs was the agency, right? And Next Guest was the CRM.
Yeah.
Is that not right?
And they provided services, a broad spectrum of services based primarily in New York. When Max Sarkoff had started it, actually, and ended up stepping away from it, selling, doing his golden ticket out, and then it turned into Next Guest. And I'm not saying I have insights as to Next Guest's performance, but I know that all of us were hit by COVID in different ways. So I'm sure it made it lucrative for a company that had money to do this with, to bring in what they do and what they have as resources and so forth into their fold. My talk off the cliff request is I don't like Sendyne. And I'm hoping they've changed. I mean, I do. I hope that they've changed, but I've always felt them to be dysfunctional, segmented, and unproductive. And it's not because I ever competed with them. I used to be a client of theirs when I had hotels to have clients with, and I was frustrated consistently. And I know people that worked with them and so forth, have worked with them and so forth. And companies all go through iterations and transformations and changes and cultural variances and so forth. So I may not be speaking of the Sendyne that exists now by any stretch. And I'm not discouraging people to not look at them. They've turned into this massive company, which in my mind is why I'm being talked off the cliff. If I already felt the way I felt about them, giving them more weapons, tools, and skills doesn't necessarily make them better. It just means they're more powerful. And I've seen it, unfortunately, where a lot of businesses just don't get better at the personalization just because they got bigger. And I want to worry about the fact, do we have enough uniqueness in our industry that offers services like this, that the big, huge companies like Amadeus, aka TravelClick, like now Sendyne becoming, that we have enough counterbalance to that hotels and hotel ownership groups just don't have to default to their engagement with these people? Like, can they go to Fuel Travel? Oh, hey, look, Stuart's back.
Yeah, I'm hoping you didn't say I was going to get you sued while I was gone. I was going to give you some friendly advice before I left.
Please do. I didn't know. I just was asking about, as these larger entities become in the creation, like the Amadeus taking over Travel and so forth, and now Sendyne growing to the size that it is, are a lot of companies having just simply to default to them as being like a black hole in the universe where they have to be drawn in?
Let's be honest, right? And if we look at the big two booking engine technologies in the industry, TravelClick's iHotelier product, and you've got the Synexus. Sorry, I'm having a brain fart right there. Yeah, but they dominate the market, right? The two of them. No one can sit there and argue that they're the best booking engine technologies on the market. They're not. They're barely functional in mobile. They don't open within the website. They're not embedded in the URL. They open in new tabs. They're not great with analytics. They're not great products, but they do a decent job. The reason people choose them is because it's the easy option, right? It's the product they've known probably at the last 5 jobs they've had. They're probably using the CRS with that same company, and so it's less headache than going with a best in breed product. But I do think, you look at ideas and what they're doing with their data platform. You look at folks like Happy and others that are trying to create real easy plug and play connectivity across the industry. I think these guys are probably a little nervous that they're going to lose market share, and I'd include Sendine in that too. This is why they're trying to buy up other companies, because it gives them clients that then they can lock into their tentacles of other products. But I don't think that's the will of the industry. I think people are looking to move away from this being locked into one ecosystem, and they want choice, because different products offer different value propositions, and different properties need different products for their specific needs. So,
and as far as Sendine, there are other good companies that are out there besides, these. I think you're talking about Sendine, but specifically. But what are ones that are actually doing a good job?
Of which products? Because that's the thing, right? There's different companies doing different pieces of it really, really well.
Right, CRM, email.
Yeah. Well, obviously, Fuel does great at all of those. That goes without saying, right?
No bias there whatsoever.
Yeah.
The other thing you run into is that when you talk about the major brands, especially, so those are the big dogs that drive all the decisions in the industry for a lot of players, is that there's the agency of record, right? So they're going to have their agency of record, number one, and then they're also going to try to funnel all of their properties into other. I mean, not everybody can go into that agency of record, right? But they're going to have approved vendors. They're going to say, okay, yeah, you can work with this guy, this guy, this guy, and that tends to fall into the Sendines of the world of where you go. There's a lot of good agencies out there. Certainly, Fuel Travel. Kudos to Fuel Travel. The Blue Magnet Interactive out of Chicago is a great agency. Visergy down in Florida is a great agency. A lot of these companies that have been around for a long time, actually, but tend to be the boutique digital agency. Lauren, Hospitality Digital Marketing, right? Let's give kudos where but they tend to be that more boutique agency. Look for some of those.
Yeah, and I think Alexis makes a good point that I think it's all about who can integrate with your PMS booking and restaurant. And to that caveat, I say, Alexis, that it's a lazy decision sometimes that some people make. They don't want to go through the really painful process of truly evaluating their full tech stack, and instead saying, okay, I'm not a huge fan of the PMS, but we got the biggest contract or the longest contract or the most financially unviable for us to extract contract or the most expensive to transition off of component. So let's put that anchor in the sand. We got to figure out what connects to our PMS. And that immediately changed the scope of opportunity to best in breed to what works with this thing. And it's not always the best thing that works with that thing. And it doesn't always work with the other things. And all of a sudden, what you wish it could do ends up being what it can end up being based on limitations you self-create. And
it's not just the PMS, though, is it? It's also the management company. It's
right.
Also,
yeah. I'm just doing
the time to transition to the new system.
Yeah, and you know what? That brings me up to a point. When we were in the conversation Clubhouse, and I don't keep referring it out for those who are not on our Clubhouse conversations. Please, this is not detrimental. That's why we're dragging it into this conversation. As a matter of fact, I'm trying to figure out a way of us doing both at the same time on these things. Is people make these decisions in the most biased ways. I have one person on the Clubhouse where they were talking about the fact, like, yeah, I talked to our staff, and they just didn't want to go through the process of the data extraction, conversion. Dude, you pay these people to do the job. It's not, I mean, yes, I'm all about feedback is what it's going to take to do it. But from a management responsibility level, succumbing to the preference of I don't want to compared to what's best for us is a poor management decision. If you know it's best for the company to do this painful transition, painful being what the perception is of the people that have to facilitate it. Yeah, I don't want to dig a ditch either, but grab a shovel. You're going to have to go through this process. And better to do it now when the impact is minimal in comparison to other times than it is to do it in the middle of trying to run the race.
Well, there's a couple ways you can accomplish it, though. You don't have to be a tyrant and tell people they have to do it, but you can show them the why behind it. Like, what is the benefit to them in the long term? I mean, do they short term have a little pain and have to relearn a new system? It's not much different than when you switch PMS. Everyone hates their own PMS, but no one wants to go through the rigmarole of switching to a new PMS because they're just trading one set of problems for another, and they've got to go through the learning curve of a new system. And so the only way you can really get people to buy in is to sell them on the value proposition. Like, what does this mean to your day-to-day? How much time is this going to save you? How much more money is this going to make the company, and therefore that you can benefit from? And so, yeah, you've got to get alignment to get buy-in. Because if you drag people along to a new technology, it's never going to work because they're always going to fight it, and they're going to find reasons to poke holes in it. And there's no perfect technology. You're going to find holes if you poke hard enough.
Stuart, I'm feeling a little betrayed. I read your book, The Sith Guide to Management. Do it. And I feel like you just stopped following what you preach there. I mean, it's
that was under my pen name.
No, and yeah, I agree with you on that. But obviously, if doing these kind of things, and Stuart, you're the one that keeps vanguarding this in our conversations. Technical review right now is critical. Technical upgrades, technical perception. I mean, not everybody just needs to throw everything they're doing just because they can. Some things really just need to be, and this is something I point out to, re-educated. I think I brought up the fact that something that Bonnie Buckheister brought up once. It's called Xerox training. Somebody goes through the initial implementation training and they retain maybe 40% of what they were taught because at the time they were only interested in certain aspects. Well, that becomes solidified, and then they train the next person before they step on, or whether they need to train somebody else. Well, if they only retrain 40% of what that 40% was, guess what? You get, less than optimum understanding of the platform. Eventually, what happens is an ignorance of the platform. Even if they were keeping up with the upgrades, which is unlikely because they always cost. Thank you for the monetization there, people. They probably don't really know all the full functionality of the platform itself because they've never really truly used it to its full capacity. And they don't keep up with the training from a first person perspective as much as they should, because guess what? Monetization wise, the platform charges you to do that as well. The best thing some of these platforms could do is waive this cost factor. I mean, I own a Mac. The dang thing updates itself and I don't pay for it. Yeah, I paid for Mac, don't get me wrong. But I paid for also the fact that they do keep the things upgraded to that. And if I want to learn more about it, you look at Facebook. They don't charge you to learn how to do their ad set. They want you to spend money with them. Hell yeah, I'll train you how to do that.
So there's an inherent problem in our industry that doesn't necessarily exist in every industry, but I think it's one of the parts of what creates this situation that we're dealing with, and that is that there's a lot of turnover. Right. So everyone can look good for a couple of years in a job, right? You can make decisions that really positively impact your P&L or whatever your goals are, right? It's like when the new CEO comes in or new operations manager and cuts the thread count on the linens and saves a few bucks, right? In the first 6 months, that looks great on your P&L. But what happens when customer satisfaction starts to decrease over time and your review scores go down and then your ADR goes down, your occupancy goes down? But if you have a two-year or 3-year window and you can do short-term planning for short-term wins, you're only going to get so far, and you're never going to take on these type of projects where you're overhauling complete infrastructures. What we need to adopt in the industry is, I've seen a lot of people use the term cathedral thinking, right? It's you're building towards a vision that you may not ever see the final product of. You're going to hand that off to future people to do that. But you've got to understand that unless you're the one that starts it, it's never going to get started and it's never going to get finished. So always run every decision you're making like you're the third leg of a relay, and that your job isn't necessarily to get the credit and the kudos for bringing people home and winning the race. Your job is to hand the baton off to the anchor leg, the person that's going to finish it off. That might end up being you, but more often than not in this industry, it's not. People are jockeying for position and changing roles. So you've really got to, and it's tough, right? Because you want to get the short-term win so it looks great on your resume so you can go up the next rung. But we're always going to be in this position as an industry if everyone's always looking out for themselves in the short term and not doing this cathedral thinking and long-term strategy.
That goes back to mission. right? What's our mission at our heart, at our company heart, or those people that are loyal or not necessarily loyal, but
Committed. Yeah.
committed. That's right.
Yeah.
Those people that are committed to those missions. And then
Yeah.
that's when the baton, they're not that lead person and it's a full team. And that's where it takes you out of those darn silos.
Yep.
I think in COVID, it has created those silos too, where, you know, we're going along, we were on Earth and now we're in a different place. And those silos have kind of broken down with people that have moved or furloughed or changed and retraining. And how are those, you know, what I've the hospitality family or whatever it is on Facebook, the group that's there, you can learn a lot about what's going on in our industry. And you know, you heard, and we hear about what happened over Valentine's, where there wasn't enough staffing, yet all the hotels across the United States were full. People wanted to get out and they wanted to do something special. And I don't think, I agree for sure that there's this turnover and not, you know, getting those people that are loyal and not loyal, but committed.
There's a bad combination that I think is going to be ever present and growing as an issue is the, I wouldn't say ignorance because that's a rough word, the lack of understanding of what they're responsible
Naivety, maybe? Is that
What's
what
that?
you're looking for? The naivety?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. You know, I kind of equate it to, you know, you see used car commercials every day and you just ignore them until you need to buy a car. And then you're looking at the ads because you want to see what people are offering. I experience consistently, and I don't know whether you all agree with this, I can deal with clients and they outwardly acknowledge that they're aware and apparently they seem to understand what I'm referring to and talking about until it becomes serious that they actually have to know what I'm talking about. Now, I first off chalked it up to just the way I talk, you know, all over the place, way too much on lots of stuff.
Yeah, most of us don't know what you're talking about.
Right,
Of the
you
time.
know, but then it turns out that I could have said and gone back to this several times, and then all of a sudden it gets real, and they have to answer maybe to an ownership of a hotel and or one of their constituents or their boss or something, and all of a sudden it turns into, so this PPC stands for what again? And you're like, oh God. How many months have we been thinking you understood what we were doing and you don't eat? No. Okay. So I think, unfortunately, in this process of furloughing that you referred to, Virginia, and so forth, we have a huge brain loss for people that really knew how to get stuff done. They settled for what they were given as opportunities or whatever it was, but now they can't find jobs and so forth. And they've had to take their skills and go someplace else to make income. And now as we begin to expand out our demand and market again, hopefully, you know, all things willing, everyone take their vaccine and everything else, that we need people to come back in. Well, a lot of those people that were really good at what they did aren't coming back in. They found other things. They either don't want to come back to the volatility and or they found something better and or they just lost their motivation to it. Whatever it is, there is going to be a transition of who we're working with. Who we kept, however, and I'm being blank when I say this, I'm not inferring that everybody was not the best person to keep, but there was a lot of people that were kept based on their title rather than their talent. And I know this because when they were actually having to be put into a scenario where they had to facilitate what they were supervising prior, because people below them did it, they don't know how the sausage was made. They just knew that the sausage was there and they could report how many sausages were made that day, but they have no clue what the sausage factory did. And so now they're the people who are responsible to bring the people back in. And to Virginia's point, a lot of them are going to be new to what they're going to be doing, or not as skilled as the people that were in the position before, and they need to be educated. Now, I see that as an opportunity of really upgrading our services, train the right way, teach the right things, show them firsthand training, compared to, oh, you know what that is. That's front desk stuff. You know, I mean, I know you weren't a supervisor before, but you're a supervisor now because I need a supervisor. You at least were a front desk person. Look, fog a mirror. You know, and they're going to be put into roles that they're not qualified for nor trained for. And we're setting ourselves up for imminent failure in lots of levels, because the people that are left, or we had left, that didn't know it themselves can't train what they don't know. And there's a huge need, I think, coming up of educating people at every level of what they're being introduced to. And if anything, at the very least, the re-education and bringing up to speed of the people that were supposedly the knowledgeable people that were kept, to be brought up to the new And ready for this, Stuart? Paradigm.
That's not the word.
Of what they have to experience. I've solidified that term simply because it makes you smile.
It does. But we are laughing at you, not with you, Lauren. It's okay.
It's okay. That would be, you're joining a large crowd. That's good. Anyway,
Cool.
I mean, am I off? Kind of on? What do you think?
No, I think you're on.
Okay.
I unfortunately have to jump.
No, we're kind of at the bottom of the hour of 2 hours of happiness and joy. I will be sharing Robert's list. I know we touched on the concept of a couple of the things. We referred to a couple of the articles, but we certainly didn't bring them up and go hard at them. We're happy as heck Robert came back up with a list because he truly does give an awesome list when he has the opportunity to put this together for us. For those who want to sign up for it, it's at bit.ly/rockcheetah, all lowercase, no space.
And it is, I mean, it is bar none. It's the most well thought out, well curated list in our industry. I think he does a good job kind of balancing between marketing, finance, just general hospitality news. He's a smart guy. And
also I have to give him a compliment too. It's not BuzzFeed following. A lot of people start tailoring their content based on how much volume of traffic they can get based on what they headline is. Ta-da! This is it. And even though some of those articles do have relevantly good content to them, I'm not discouraging that. It's just their motivation for why they went that direction or went that way with stuff, I think is more about how many eyeballs they can get than it is so much what is the value to the content.
Well, he's done what you should do as a brand, right? He's because there is a argument that clickbaity subject lines are effective. You can manipulate people with sensationalism to, and use words like secret tips that we're going to reveal, and you can use that kind of trickery to get people to click. But at the end of the day, if you do your job with any kind of channel, especially email, of building brand loyalty, where people look forward to the content you're sending because you're providing value in every one, the subject line matters not, because people are looking at who it came from and they trust it. Just like if you sent me an email, Lauren, regardless of what the subject line, I'm going to open it every time, because usually when you send me something, occasionally it's inappropriate pictures, but most of the time it's valuable work-related or fun stuff that I'm interested in seeing. And your job as an email marketer should be to get to that level of trust with your consumers as well. And once you get to that level, by providing value, delivering on the promise that you made when they signed up, the subject line is irrelevant. And that's exactly what Robert's done.
Yeah, very true. That's probably the most been pointing out by far for that.
Absolutely. And you know that you're going to smile and laugh when you open it up. Every single one is hilarious. There's just really
part of his brand, right? He has a good wit about him.
He does. He has a very dry wit. And, whether you agree with him at the time or not, it makes you think about it because you're open to his perspective. In all difference, I'll say that about Ed. I'll say about everybody on this show that if again, to your point, if I get something from you all, it's on my priority of making sure I don't miss it. I'm not like, oh, Dean sent me another email. Whoop-de-doo. No, it's like, what, Dean? Yeah. What? And then it's like, whoa, Dean, whoa, yeah, buddy, woo.
Now, I will always virus scan Dean's just in case. You never know. He's kind of a shady guy. But,
that's a wise choice.
Virginia, what's your last name so that I can put it in the list, or do you prefer not to tell us? I was going to put it as in the credits because I do the rehash of the show and I put the credits up and stuff. And I don't have my first name.
That's okay. It's Phelps, Phelps, like Michael Phelps, the swimmer.
Oh, okay. I'll make sure you're in the credits for the show. I sincerely appreciate you joining us. And I don't. Do you have Clubhouse? Do you have an iPhone? Are you in that space at all?
I do not. I'm not in Clubhouse, but I will search that out.
See if it is, and you know how to reach me. The Lauren at Hospital Digital Marketing kind of thing. I am going to, and take Stuart's excellent suggestion, I'm going to change my bio on Clubhouse to put the link to our show. I think that's an excellent suggestion. I did already change my profile picture to be me rather than my logo, because I guess that's, as you said, a faux pas.
It's actually against the terms of the platform.
Yeah, I just grabbed that default, so now it has me smiling, which I think is going to be a deterrent. And I am trying to figure out technology-wise how we can maybe combine this with that. I am going to do a podcast today, recapping today's show a little bit, but also to talk a little bit about Clubhouse conversation as well. And there is a tool, and Stuart, I'm going to send this over to you again, called Threat Cop, that is a phishing testing.
No, phishing.
platform.
Yeah, I looked at it. I think it's legit.
To me, it's like I'm going to push it to a client to try. And basically, for everyone else, you can listen to the podcast, but it's a tool that you can do to test your staff and everyone else that is connected to your domain. You have to have access to your domain email system, SMTP files, to be able to do this, where it'll send out emails to test how susceptible they are in sharing content, data, and potentially risk factors to your security.
Yeah, and it's good, right? Because it's not just pointing out the problem. So if you contract them to do it, they'll do a survey to your audience, or they'll actually do a test first to see who's going to give up stuff. Then all the employees go through a training session, and then they do another anonymous test afterwards to see what kind of impact the training had, and see.
Yeah. So I know Ed has talked about his famous drop flash drives in the lobby and see who jacks the computer kind of thing stuff. But it is a serious issue, and we see it in the news all the time. And until it hits you personally, you don't realize how impactful it truly is to have your accounts jacked. And gosh knows if it actually got into your personal stuff or your finances.
There was a large PMS company. I'm not going to mention it, but they have at least 2,000 properties on their PMS. Everyone knows their name. I'm not going to mention them by name, but they and this was through, I don't know if it was through phishing, but it was through an individual within the organization accidentally let an admin password slip to some nefarious group that happened to be a ransomware company. They also happened to use the same admin password on every single one of their clients. And they basically, for a few days, locked up all of their web-based clients, the ones that were cloud served, locked up every single one of their systems for several days.
Oh dear.
Wow.
Yeah. And it was human error. Your human line is the weakest point of entry for any kind of hacker.
True.
You got to make sure it's strong.
True. Well, like I said, I'm going to go a little bit over that on the podcast today. Dean, you're overdue on yours. I know. I'm going to just give you grief about that on a regular basis. And for those who want to listen to the award-winning podcast, the award-winning podcast, not but the award-winning podcast, Mr. Stewart, where can they find that, sir?
Yeah, fueltravel.com/podcast, or you can just search hotel marketing anywhere you listen to podcasts, and we'll show up number one. We're recording episode 178 today, and it's a Melissa episode, so we know it's going to be good.
Ooh,
she is
good.
the queen of analytics, and we are going to be talking about metrics that you should be paying attention to in your Google Analytics. And then I think next week we're going to try an experiment. We've got to figure out the logistics, but I think we're going to do a live behind the scenes, live Clubhouse stream while we record an episode talking about Clubhouse and the pros and the cons and stuff. So it's going to be a real meta episode where we're going to be streaming on there. So you'll get to see all the bloopers in the real-time conversation that happens while we're recording an episode on Clubhouse. So if you don't have a Clubhouse login yet, you have to have an iPhone. But I think I've got 3 or 4 invites, and I can probably get you more if you need. So if you want an invite, you can hit me up, Stuart, STUART, @fueltravel.com. Just send me your iPhone number, your phone number for your iPhone, and I can trigger you an invite. So
Cool.
Be happy to do that.
Well, you know how you used to compliment that Clubhouse didn't have trolls? I'm going to troll your show when that happens, just so you know.
Well, we're not gonna let you on stage, so you won't be able to.
I'll be like, come on, man, raise my hand.
Well, I think what we're actually gonna do is we're gonna do like from the beginning we start recording until the end, we're gonna just stream it so people can tune in and listen. But then at the end, we're gonna do a live Q&A as well, I think. So
Sweet.
That's when we'll let people on stage. So it's just an experiment. We've been having a lot of fun playing around with Clubhouse over the last few days. The audience is growing, and I see a lot of potential with this platform. And if you'd asked me a week ago or 2 weeks ago, I would have said it's just a bunch of egomaniacs in trying to sell their snake oil. And I guess I'm now an egomaniac trying to sell my snake oil.
Well, it's not really a new thing, but at least you're admitting it, which is better than what the therapist said you were doing last time. So that's okay. Virginia, thank you for joining us. What is it you do and stuff?
Communications, marketing communications, graphic design, I change sheets and beds and clean bathrooms when we need to, and kind of do whatever we need to do around our hotels. So I wear many hats. I've been in the industry. Well, I've only been working with our hotels for about 10 years almost, but have worked with branding and graphic design and printing and just obsessed with kind of marketing and figuring it out. I don't know anything, so I'm trying to learn.
I think probably that'd be more than you give yourself credit for. But is there any contact information you want to share, or anything anybody you want to shout out to as to the hotels or anything, or just a happy contributor to the conversation today?
Happy contributor to the conversation.
Perfect.
Well, thank you for joining us.
Yes, thank you very much for joining us, Dean, to tell us all the amazing, life-saving, world-changing things that you do every day. 42. Where can they reach you and all that cool stuff?
So, you're actually, ironically, earlier we were talking about educating some of the staff that is left over now after the mass exodus from COVID, if you will. And that's kind of what prompted me to launch one of my companies, basecampmeta.com, where I recognized that there was a need for education about metasearch. So if you were at that hotel and just suddenly got metasearch dropped in your lap and you're wondering, what is this? We have resources for that. More likely for a digital agency that has now been tasked with running a metasearch campaign for your clients, we have a course that you can take to become a better expert on that topic. Also at metasearchmarketing.com, rather than just trying to learn all about it, how about outsourcing it to somebody to run your metasearch campaign? I can help you do that. In fact, not only can I help you do that, if you are that small little 10-room bed and breakfast in Lincoln, Nebraska, that nobody ever wanted to talk to about running a metasearch campaign, we have a special program, Google Meta for small hotels, that we can help you with.
With that in mind, thank you all. Again, thank you everyone that was dialoguing. Richard, I know you had already left, but Melissa, thank you for being that person that pointed out very clearly first-person data. Just so you know, we listen to every word. We hang on every word that you put out there, just so you know. And also, Alexis, thank you. We didn't get to the comment that emphasized that, as well as I think you were referring to what the integrations were. That's definitely a discussion we'd like to continue with. For those who don't know and who are on Clubhouse, we do a noon Eastern time room under what is it?
For listening.
Yeah, if you just if you're following if you follow the hospitality clubs, you'll see it scheduled.
Yeah, as you have one of the hospitality clubs are in there, but yeah, Vic, I always appreciate you being here, bud. Sincerely. Vic's a friend of mine from years back, but yes, Vic, actually, when he turns rich and famous, we're going to all want to know him. I can tell you that. But yeah, the Clubhouse, it's under one of the clubs right now, which is one of the hospitality clubs. I think it's Hospitality and More, I think is the club we're running under. And the room is Hospitality Marketing. Look for the one that has all the little emoticons on it, because Stuart always bedazzles our topic list with emoticons. But we try to, it's an open forum discussion, and we try to just start with a theme. And usually the theme runs the whole duration. We've been running longer than I ever expected we were.
Yeah, hour and a half, 2 hours every day.
It's like this show, but we get a lot of engagement because it's easier for people to engage, apparently, on just audio. And that's Monday through Thursday. We might do a Monday through Friday, depending upon if we can find an adopted moderator that can carry for the time we're doing the show.
Let's just kill this show. No one listens. It's fine.
Thank you, Stuart. Thank you for that. You know, I don't want to lose Melissa, so I'm not going to even ask Melissa to do it, because I want Melissa on this conversation.
Yeah. I think it's fine Monday through Thursday. It gives people a break, 3-day break from our nonsense. It's fun.
Monday through Thursday. So there's that. Obviously, the podcast, your podcast, so forth and so on. For archives of this show and all the others, you can go to hospitalitydigitalmarketing.com/live. Look for this show, which is number 290. And of course, all previous 289 are there as well, with associated links and Robert's list and everything else like that. So with that, thank you, everybody, for joining us today. And we'll see you on Clubhouse earlier than we'll see you on this show next Friday at 11:30 a.m. Eastern. So bye, everybody. Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Cheers.
Thank you.